Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mewscast, where we discuss what's hot and what's not in hospitality tech, along with some of the sharpest minds across the industry and beyond. On today's episode, what is the future of payments in the hospitality space? Fintech is the buzzword on everyone's lips. By the way, that stands for financial technology to the uninitiated. And it's making a dent in all sorts of industries. So it was always unlikely that hoteliers would be spared. Transformative changes are already upon us, but who is really benefiting? From the guest experience, to productivity savings, to fraud and cybersecurity, is there even any need for a change? We talked to recently crowned payments unicorn Stripe, super hot Swedish point-of-sale startup iZettle, the socially conscious Good Hotel, and a few others to try and get to the bottom of it all.
For a lot of people, they might not understand why a PMS company is talking about payments and why it devotes so much time thinking about it and talking about it.
That's Richard Walter, the Czech founder of Muse with a suspiciously British accent. He started building his own PMS after grappling with real issues he was having when building hotels in Prague. And payments was always at the core of that excruciating pain.
The origins of Muse basically starting out in the hotel in Prague, which is the hotel emblem. The problem that I was basically trying to solve there is how to make sure that everyone who comes in doesn't have to have that boring conversation about, give me your credit card, give me your personal details, all of those things. And the reason why we actually started building a PMS in the first place was because we found that with the existing providers, we couldn't solve that problem. And the main bottleneck was payments.
So it would appear that hospitality software and payment technology haven't always kept pace with each other. But what do we mean when we say payments? And what does the landscape look like within hospitality? To find out a bit more about the lay of the land, we spoke with Ian McDougall of Stripe, the fast-growing payment processor that is quickly out-muscling and out-maneuvering the incumbents of the payment industry.
So I think there's interesting things going on in payments, particularly in hospitality, that we've started to see in other sectors as well. And they're things like, to use the cliche, kind of the Uber-style experience of payments, invisible payments where, you only ask your client or your customer once for their payment credentials, and then irrespective of kind of how they engage with you across channels, whether it's online for the booking or at checkout, in the hotel or the property or the accommodation type, that the payments are not intrusive for them. And so I think we've taken a lot of cues from what's gone on in the kind of the pure online world there, and are starting to see some of that nicely now translate more to the offline world also. And guys like iZettle have definitely got a lot to be kind of proud of in that space as well. The way they've kind of enhanced that kind of what we would call the card present environment. I think the other thing that's going on from our perspective that's really exciting is just what's going on in the world of kind of what we term platforms and marketplaces, and this is a space that's obviously very relevant and familiar to you guys, but it's going on kind of everywhere. There is a marketplace, something that connects buyers and sellers of goods and services in pretty much every kind of industry sector at the moment. And I think actually that's where we're starting to see a lot of the innovation going on in spaces like, well, if companies and then the underlying payments technology that supports them needs to be kind of truly global because the consumers are global, then not only does the technology need to operate on a global basis, but it also needs to be very localized. It needs to be the right payment method, the right currency, via the right channel for whatever the kind of the quirks or nuances of a consumer in a certain country might be. And so we're very excited about everything that's going on there in terms of how API-based technologies are allowing merchants or platforms or properties or retailers to really not be concerned about the complexity of how you bring all of those payment methods and instruments to market, but just by virtue of the fact that you can now offer whatever the consumer needs to take, friction out of the payment process.
So Stripe, a payment processor, are already witnessing the Uberization of payments within hospitality. And the concept of frictionless and invisible payments is increasingly crucial. But Ian also mentions iZettle, another rocket ship of a startup. They're Swedish, and they provide the point-of-sale systems for so many businesses looking for slicker alternatives to clunky old bank technology. You might have actually put your card through one of their sexy blue and white pads the last time you bought a coffee. iZettle's Ed Hadley points out how these new technologies point to a future of invisible payments, doing business where you otherwise wouldn't, and the end of old silos for inventory.
Payment ultimately is something that you want to be invisible. You want it to be invisible as a consumer, and you really want it to be invisible as a merchant so that it doesn't get in the way of the consumer's efforts to pay. And so that's something that platforms enable, really. Is that they tend to be the ones that drive the decision. Am I going to use Stripe? Maybe a decision that gets driven by, am I going to use Muse? And the Uber example is great because it shows you how key a decision-making driver payments is. There's the convenience of Uber and the speed to get an Uber taxi, but actually how much does that compare with a black cab in London? Actually, often you can get a black cab faster. And payments, the fact that you don't have to use cash, that there isn't that hassle, drives decision-making. So that's applies to so many different situations. I think the removal of friction there is happening in other areas in not quite the same form. So I think contactless payment is a very obvious case where, you might find that you do business where you otherwise wouldn't because you accept a contactless form of payment. So point of sale, historically has been based on, the sort of administrative need to manage a point of sale, but also determined by the friction that comes with having to have a big fat computer on your desk to manage a transaction. Given with mobility more and more in place, point of sale starts to sort of shift to being where the customer wants it to be. So in the case of booking, obviously you have lots of mobility in and around booking. But I think that's just one part of a hotel's inventory. You have all of the inventory connected with your food and your beverages that you supply, and you have the inventory connected with other services like massage and so on that might take place in your establishments. There, I think the digitalization of that inventory, the fact that it sits in the cloud, can enable lots of different interactions that don't take place at your cashier desk in the front of your hotel. So the obvious ones would be using a mobile device to connect with your cloud point of sale in your restaurant to order something to my room, or using my mobile device to order a service like a massage and have payment as part of that experience. And there you see point of sale shifted from the checkout environment to where I want to pay as a consumer. And I think that's a trend.
So with frictionless payments, consumers clearly win, and it also means properties are now doing business where they otherwise wouldn't. Everyone's a winner, and let's be honest, who isn't trying to improve the guest experience, right? But for properties, automating online payments brings far more benefits than just extra revenue from happier guests. Switching to online payments drastically transforms operations by driving unprecedented productivity savings, as well as helping slash fraud costs. We spoke with the general manager of London's Good Hotel, one of the city's most unique properties. Dragged over by a barge from Holland and located in London's up-and-coming Docklands area, the hip floating hotel is at the forefront of hospitality tech adoption.
Hi, my name is Latoros. I'm a general manager of Good Hotel in London. The single biggest frustration we had with any other system back in the day was how long it took us to do basic tasks, and half of the time we had to do them manually anyways. So ever since we switched to Muse, what we saw, we were able to save about 10 hours a day just on admin work in the back office a week, which is absolutely amazing because we suddenly can concentrate on our good training program, on allocating resources and money and time into the good causes that Good Hotel is known for. The main difference now, since we started using Muse Merchant, is the fact that our staff stop making mistakes. Therefore, they don't have to chase me or don't have to chase them. They can sleep well. They don't have to call me. They don't have to text me. They don't have to email me at all times at night. Everything just balances. Everything is there. And we can see all the results any time zone, anywhere in the world. So the thing I miss the most about old payment terminals is nothing.
Right. So there's clearly plenty of productivity savings that can be released by switching to online payments. But not all hotels are as forward-thinking as the likes of London's Good Hotel. The reality is, many properties are still resisting change. Why? We had a chat with our very own straight-talking Dutchman, who has his boots on the ground and finger on the pulse, and works with hoteliers day in, day out to explain the benefits of switching.
Hi, my name is Nick Wienen and I'm the project manager for Muse Merchant and automated online payments at Muse. The resistance I get from hoteliers about automated payments mostly consists of 5 different points. So first of all, the lack of awareness. So what is possible? What can you do with automated payments and how will it benefit your operations? Second thing is that many hoteliers are scared to provide a personal touch, give options of the way of payment, either cash, credit card, or chip and PIN. Third thing that I run into is the cost of automation. The fourth thing is that it's basically just a habit. So they have always done it this way and they don't see really why they should change it. And as last, especially if you talk about card not present transactions, the fear of fraud and especially not knowing what fraud prevention systems are out there.
So it looks like there are 5 misplaced points of contention amongst hoteliers. A general lack of awareness of the solution, a concern over the lack of a personal touch by limiting payment method options for guests, the costs involved, the fact that old habits truly die hard, and worries about increased fraud. When it comes to the personal touch, the irony is that most guests get an even more bespoke experience as a result of using online payments, as the anxiety and time it takes to process payments vanishes while staff are focused on having real conversations with them instead. Much like we have seen with Uber, few consumers ever look back once they make the switch to invisible payments. In any case, the option to pay in other methods can still exist behind the counter. Here's Nick to explain it.
So if we talk about the personal touch, it's really about what kind of personal touch, right? So taking a payment, I understand that hoteliers want to give them an option to either pay in cash or take an online payment, and I think that should always be the case. But it's more about having the ability to take it in a really quick way, rather than having the conversation, how would you like to pay? So change your question and ask, okay, I have your credit card stored here on your customer profile. Would you like to pay with the card ending on 546? And if they agree, they will agree. You can take the payments and it's done. So the moment the guest books, the credit card is stored at the customer profile. So from the time of booking all the way till the end, you can charge that card if you would like. So in any case of an extra charge, whether they want an extra night at the hotel, they want to buy an extra towel, you can just charge the card directly and you don't have to have the conversation about the payment. You just do it in one go. The moment the guest checks out and is at reception, if they really want to pay in a different way, they will let you know. Whereas if you can just take the payment, asking them, like, does your credit card end with 567? Would you mind if I charge your card? If they don't want it, they will tell you, and you can give them the option to pay either in cash or with a different credit card.
So it's safe to say that the idea of the personal touch is nuanced, and that automating payments empowers guests while not actually taking away options. Meanwhile, on the perceived higher costs argument, the numbers don't stack up anymore if you look at the medium and long term. There appears to be an over-focus on the direct upfront rates, and too many overlook the productivity savings, which more than offset any higher rates. Here's Nick again on the topic.
Usually in negotiation about automated payments, they're overly focused on the direct rate. So either they compare terminals with online gateway, where in that case you actually compare apples with pears, right? Because automation can bring so much more in terms of cost savers and especially productivity cost savers, either at the back office because all reporting is directly in their back-end system, cost savers in terms of time savers at reception, and especially no need for a night auditor that is manually entering credit cards numbers in the terminal. This is all automated, and you really need to educate your hoteliers on this because they're not aware. and they usually have never heard about it before. If you see how much time you can save either at reception or in your back office, and then you multiply that by the amount of staff that you have to hire extra to do all those manual tasks, that really adds up per month, per year. So yeah, I think that in order to see the benefit of online payments, you should really show them the bigger picture of what it can bring in terms of productivity savings rather than focus on the direct rate. It's also about freeing up your staff to actually focus on the guest and focus on the guest experience rather than doing all those manual tasks that they usually do.
And that's an important point to make. It's not just about suffering from the productivity costs of menial manual tasks. It's also about the opportunity costs that hoteliers currently have. To put it into context, we spoke with the Lamington Group, who have been rolling out their new room-to-hometel concept across the UK. A hybrid of an apartment with all the perks of a hotel, they have been successful filling a void in the market that has appeared over the last several years.
Hi, I'm Alex Handley. I'm the marketing manager at Lamington and Room 2 Hotels. So as we know, in hotels there's quite a few manual day-to-day processes for our back-end teams and our reservationists. So where we can introduce automatic processing and automatic payments particularly, it enables greater time back in the day or productivity improvements for those teams. And that really allows them to spend more time on the floor talking and engaging with our guests, delivering those genuine experiences, but also helping us to understand our guests in a much more concise and deeper manner, so we can really look at where we can improve their experiences and how we can work on developing the product as a whole for future markets and for future properties as well.
The final elephant in the room is fraud and cybersecurity. Not a week goes by that we don't hear of yet another data breach at a major corporation, including some of the largest hotel chains in the world. Many still believe the best answer is to seek protection in increasingly offline and manual ways of taking payments. But this is a fatal error. The real answer lies in even more advanced technologies and by leveraging companies that are the best in class at fraud detection. Here's Ian McDougall from Stripe again, who are leading the way with their AI-fueled radar solution.
The premise of Stripe, and as you say, we were founded by two Irish brothers, and their goal was the slightly techie terminology we use is to abstract away the complexity of payments. When I think about that and try to articulate, I think that kind of comes in lots of layers. One of those is simply, how does someone who's trying to run a business and take payments from their customers, how do they get their head around all of the different pieces of financial infrastructure and payment methods that they might have to connect to? So at one layer, we get rid of that. I think security is another kind of, I think of that of a layer of complexity that frankly, you guys, your customers don't want to be in the business of having to worry about, especially when it comes to kind of payment data, because as you say, BA are not enjoying the headlines that they've had, recently as a result of that. And so I think taking away just some of that inherent, PCI certification and making sure that people aren't handling kind of raw credit card numbers and details, the technology exists such that nobody other than a payments company should be having to think about kind of dealing with that and kind of managing the complexity and, as you say, the risk that comes with that, because that's what we do for a living. I think the other aspect of security that is inseparable from that is that of fraud. It is the scourge of the payments industry for sure. And again, having to think about, how to deal with that when it's not your core business is just something that consumes kind of a lot of resources. And so when you're a technology-oriented company and you can bring to bear, machine learning models that can operate at gigantic global scale to say, right, the first time that, any given merchant presents a credit card from one of their customers for the first time, there's an 86% chance that we'll have seen that exact credit card somewhere on the Stripe network, somewhere in the world before, and we can take a couple of hundred signals like, when did we last see it? Where did we last see it? What did it buy? How frequently has it been used? all the way down to how long did the person that last used that credit card spend on the web page where they used it before they actually entered their card details, because all of these signals are very sophisticated means for identifying hacks and fraud. So as you say, we built some technology to manage that risk for ourselves, first of all, and thought, hey, wouldn't this be a good idea if we turned this into a product and made it available to our customers as well? And so that culminated in something called Radar, as you mentioned, which is, again, it's an inherent part of the payments platform, because the payments data is what allows you to do that with high fidelity.
So it makes sense that nobody other than the payment company should be handling all the payment risk and ensuing complexities. Hoteliers should be focusing on their core business and not plowing resources into trying to combat fraud, when companies like Stripe can do it instead with their advanced machine learning and global scale. And the fact that there is an 86% chance that Stripe would have seen that card and the behavior around it should build a lot of confidence. Handing over loose card details should be a thing of the past. But how do these benefits actually look for a real hospitality operation? Here's LV from The Good Hotel again.
So security and fraud are extremely important to us and our customers. If customers can't trust us, they won't stay with us. And I'm really happy to say that ever since we swapped to Muse, we saw our fraud cases, credit card fraud, reduced by 60%. More specifically, what happens is whenever there's a stolen or fraudulent credit cards, system just bounces it back, which means we don't even have to deal with it. And at the same time, we're protecting our paying customers.
And that's it. Automated online payments are the future for hotels, hostels, and apartments. The simple questions become, do you make the change sooner rather than later? And what solution will you choose? Tune in next time for more hospitality tech goodness.